The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome back to Durian ASEAN. You're still with Gowri and Arlene, and today we are going to talk about the 11th Malaysian Plan. And just before we bring on our guest for today, who is Dr. Lee Hock An, all the way from the University of Malaya, I'm going to let you guys listen to a little bit of introduction about the 11th Malaysia Plan and its focus on innovation, the innovation aspect of and productivity in the 11th Malaysian Plan, which is going to be from 2016 to 2020.
In terms of where our private sector stands, I think if you look at what our Prime Minister has been talking about in public, as far as the 11th Malaysia Plan goes, which is going to be from 2016 to 2020, the focus is going to be on how we can move towards becoming an innovation and productivity-led, trying to achieve innovation and productivity-led growth. So we very much need the private sector to be focusing on how they can be increasing productivity and also becoming more innovative. So we have various programs as well which are looking at trying to facilitate this. As I mentioned, the reason that we were set up as a national innovation agency is really to act as a catalyst for the private sector. You're absolutely right. The private sector should be driving innovation, and that's the very reason why we've been set up in this way, to be here only for 10 years, to get the private sector to be more actively involved in many of these areas that we're engaged in now. As far as the public sector is concerned, there is I think right from the top, from our chief secretary to the government, down at the civil service level, there is a big push towards seeing how the government sector can embrace innovation. Every ministry actually has an innovation department or innovation section, and they individually they are looking at how they can improve. But one of the things that we're doing, which I mentioned earlier as well, is the design thinking school, where we have a 10-week program where targeted at young working adults from age 20 to 35. Now, 60% of the intake and graduates going through this program that we have, which started in beginning of 2013, are coming from various government agencies and ministries. And we see very enthusiastic response from the individuals that go through this program, how they can use these tools that they have learned, that these design thinking tools, to use them in their respective ministries when they go back. Design thinking is about it's sort of like a way to teach innovation, because design thinking is really about using it's a process. Use a design thinking process to come up with solutions to problems and issues that arise, by empathizing with your end user. So what it means is that you actually put yourself in the place of your end customer or your end user. So in the case of a government agency or ministry, they'd be thinking about the public that use their services. How can they improve? By looking at the point of view of the public.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, good morning. This is Gowri.
And of course, you are with us on our second segment of the day, where we discuss critical issue in Southeast Asia, this time focusing on Malaysia. The 11 Malaysia Plan. Are we aiming the wrong target right now? We have Dr. Hock An Lee, or Lee Hock An, whichever that you want to call. He's a senior lecturer at UST Malaya. So, hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us
Good
today
to be-
in our studio.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, good to have you here despite
So-
the traffic.
Right. So I think I want to start with some really basic question first when it comes to the
wow.
11th Malaysian plan.
It's very technical.
First
I
of
think a
all,
lot of
that's
Malaysians
right.
are unaware of it.
And generally, they just have a perception. Like every time there's a new Malaysian plan or there's a budget, they're like, yeah, whatever. I'm not gonna understand it anyway. Like, why bother listening for hours? So maybe Dr. Lee can explain first, why is it important for a country to have sort of like this 5-year plan
Or 10 years
10
in the
years,
past,
whatever
yeah.
their time frame is? Why is it important to have that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are
101
continuing.
economics.
we are continuing, a certain practice. It's actually started way back in 1950 or 55. There was the first 5-year plan for Malaya, and then the first Malaysia plan was in 1965. That's right. And just to go back a little bit, because I think I'm not totally persuaded that it is that important. But why do we continue it? Because of the certain momentum. I mean, it's something that it's very hard to discontinue. So I think there was a time where it had a much clearer role because of the level of development and the needs, and there was the role of the bureaucracy in playing that lead role, and we don't have the kind of middle class society that also is very informed. But right now, okay, so you fast forward, 40, 50 years where we've had all these 5-year plans. So this is the 11th plan. I mean, it's the last one till 2020. So, obviously, this government, is very, very invested in this plan. And some of the roles, I think, is still remain important, setting direction, providing some analysis of how we have done in the last plan, and maybe over the longer term, over
So
a few
whenever we
decades.
want to forecast where Malaysia would be heading towards the next 5 to 10 years, the Malaysians should pay attention on the economy, the Malaysia plan.
Malaysia plans, do amalgamate. It compiles a lot of information, especially more in the past. Maybe later we can talk about how the more recent plans, gradually there's been less and less data that's been disclosed to us. But it is one document that is comprehensive in providing analysis of the economy, how we've done, and then by sector, also in terms of income, in terms of inequality, and it tracks these over time. There are targets, and so we evaluate how the country has done in terms of targets. But I feel that in recent years it's just increasingly become a public relations exercise. Very glossy documents, and just highfalutin language. Almost a very pep
But
talk.
in reality, there's little information being disclosed on what actually have been achieved in terms of the expectation of the plans. Have they been revealed? I mean, can people like you access information just to know that, just to do the balance and check or whether we have arrived to the destination that we want to go?
I mean, some of the more general ones, yes, you could. The plans do report what was the target and how have we fared relative to that target. So in terms of economic growth, that's always been the primary one for reflecting how the economy is doing as a whole, in terms of output and how that translates into income. But critically, income data just really got depleted this time. I mean, the data is there. What I mean is the disclosure of income. We just been told about the overall inequality, but some of the other dimensions like inter-ethnic and within ethnic group inequalities, up till the last plan, they were still being reported, and in this one, there was nothing.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. So, is that the reason why you're calling it is mere rhetorics, but there's not much information that you can actually see what they claim is true?
I think policy, needs to start with solid analysis. That you're grappling with the issues in a way that is objective, that is honest, that is founded on evidence, and so to just have a reality check first. I find that part of the Malaysia plan has diminished, especially in the last two plans. They are we're much more quick to project, to cherry pick and project certain outcomes instead of sticking to the continuity in some of the historical trends that we would like to see where they have gone. So there's new indicators that they're projecting, or this particular project reached out to a certain number of people. But what is the overall impact on inequality, on wages, on incomes? That has kind of been cast aside a little bit.
I noticed for this particular plan, it seems very much cheering towards the idea or the idealization of advancing towards a high-income nation. Although even until now, I don't think any of us would know what exactly it means to ordinary Malaysians. Perhaps you can shed some light on the 11 Malaysia plan, on your personal thought about this.
Yeah. It's it's being built on its platform is reaching Vision 2020. Vision 2020 had some notion of being high income, but it was about 5 years ago that I think for the first time we really benchmarked that against international convention, which is by the World Bank. And
is it a good thing that we try to benchmark against the international standards?
Yes, I think that's a good thing. Because then you have just some reference point and are not just making up your own numbers. I don't think it should be the only way. I think we also should look internally within Malaysia and what does it mean to be high income or more broadly and in a more multidimensional way, and as articulated in Vision 2020, about being fully developed, being advanced. That's where a more interesting and important discussion should take place. But the high income is something that perhaps has gotten more clarified because we are basing it on this World Bank definition.
But the definition only cover like the GDP, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
does it
specifically
cover
it's gross,
like the whole range of other, I would say, variables?
Yeah, it's only about income. Yeah, actually, gross national income. Yeah.
GNI. I see.
Yeah.
So going back to your argument regarding on the 11 Malaysia plan is resting on a flawed foundation. Why you are claiming it?
Okay. Well, there are the first two multidimensional goals. The first is real GDP growth of 5 to 6% per year, and the second is achieving gross national income per capita in line with the high income level. So we go back to the new economic model, which targeted 6.5% real GDP growth, and then very soon after that, because they were both released in 2010, the 10th Malaysia Plan targeted 6%. These were necessary to reach a certain level by 2020. That's your rate of growth, right? That's like the speed at which you're traveling. So, but we have fallen short of those targets the last 5 years. So halfway, we have been slower than we're supposed to be. Malaysian economy grew on average 5.3%. Not 6%.
But that's
now
because
we're
of
saying
external circumstances.
Yeah,
Isn't
whatever
it?
the reasons were, the focus here is still plain and simple. That you target at 6%, we only achieve 5.3%. Then the government is saying that we're still on track to achieve high.
So they are not
income.
telling the whole truth. Is that what you mean?
Well, it just doesn't really make sense. It's like if you're on a road trip for a destination that is 200 kilometers away, and then the driver tells you, okay, we're going to travel at 100 kilometers per hour, and we will get there in 2 hours. Okay, I believe that, but halfway along somewhere along the way, the driver then changes track. We're actually going to travel at 80 kilometers per hour. But we'll still get there in 2 hours.
How?
Yeah, so it doesn't make sense. So I examine it a bit further, and I think there's a combination of a few factors. But there is, including that the destination has been shifted. So they've made the destination closer. So instead of 200 kilometers, you've made it 180 kilometers, so that you only need to travel 90 kilometers per hour, right? So it's about so you target shifting, which is. The trouble is that none of this was explained. Just fed to the public, and I think there are a lot of Malaysians that question that, and that we would like the full story told. It's still I think it can be grasped that if you set a certain growth target, a certain speed, and then you fall short of that speed, you cannot be on track for your destination or your target. Yet the government was maintaining that we are on track, and in fact ahead of schedule. So that was it's not saying that we're not going to achieve high income, but it was specifically addressing the government's contention that we can grow at this particular rate and still achieve the initial target by 2020. That was suspicious to me.
But why do you think they shifted the goalpost?
That's not for me to answer. There are other factors, because the targeting, the gross national income, the international standard, that's in US dollars. So there's been some change in the exchange rates. But even if you take away all those effects, I see that they did reduce the target. It basically either you really reassessed, what was a reasonable target, and they're perfectly entitled to do that, because planning is venturing into some uncertainty, and you may have there may be very valid grounds to say that, look, our initial target was not so reasonable.
But it was never explained.
Yeah, that has never been explained. And then, of course, the other one, if we be a bit more cynical, is that they just, purposely reduced it so that it will be all more achievable. It can be all packaged and sold as a success story. But I'm not claiming either. We just don't know. But it just seems that there was, there's no, there was no disclosure, and it reflects, again, you could imagine the worst, in that there was actual, deliberate attempt to mislead, or to mislead, or it's just too much of this culture, of top down, still government knows best. Let us, we'll do all the analysis, we'll keep all the data close to our chest, and then we'll just release it, and you people will just, you people accept it, okay? I think there's partly, and it's a bit of, I see that those kind of habits are still very much in place.
But EPU, Economic Planning Unit, rebutted your initial claim about the way they somehow calculate it differently from what people, and they don't disclose that many information about how they do it as well. So what do you think about it?
Okay, well, this might get into a very technical territory, but yes, initially I had made a contention that there was some discrepancy in that we were targeting the GNI per capita based on nominal terms, when such things should be done in real terms taking into account inflation. And the Economic Planning Unit did respond to that. And I think, yeah, they were correct, and I admit that I had made some errors there, and I was not on the right track in terms of examining these discrepancies. But what I have just explained is my newer position, my revised position, which I think is I have looked at the data, and I don't know, I would stand by that, meaning that it's not about real versus nominal targeting. It's that the revision in how GDP is counted, as well as moving the target closer, so moving the destination nearer so that you can hit it.
We'll take one short break. When we return, we'll still discuss on the same topic regarding on the 11 Malaysia plan.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And of course, you're still with Hock and Lee. So, Gowri, I'm sure just like any other people here, there's just so many economic terms here that needs to be somehow explained. But first of all, you have some curiosity about the 11th
Actually,
Malaysia
I
plan.
do have a lot of questions about the 11th Malaysian plan, especially because it's being directed towards becoming a high-income nation. So I'm curious as to what exactly does it mean to be a high-income nation? What are the criteria involved in being called a high-income nation?
Well, we had talked about this earlier, but I think it's worth reiterating. There is a very specific definition, which is the World Bank, defined threshold, and that's based on what the levels of high-income nations are today. And we're projecting that to be at US 15,000 a year in the year 2020, right? So that's one benchmark, but it is and it's based on gross national income per capita. So the other thing to be clear about is what it doesn't include, or rather, it doesn't. It is omitted, right? We can, although there is a tendency for all other areas to also move, in alignment with increasing income, higher, better access to education, access to healthcare, improvements in life expectancy.
But these are part of the the trust, they call it.
Yes.
In the
I mean,
11 Malaysia plan.
It's expected that they will move in line, and they do, historically, throughout Malaysia's development. You look around the world, as incomes increase, health, education, these also tend to improve. But it is, not in the exact definition of high income, and I think that's why we need to also, broaden it. Actually, it is already there. I mean, variously called either fully developed nation or advanced. I would like to see that other values and objectives are also incorporated in very centrally into that discourse, like just a society. But I think what is a bit of inertia, because we have talked about fully developed. Now that's a big concept, very debatable, but it certainly means more than high income.
So what you meant by Malaysia plan, it should be more than just about the GDP, GNI, or whatever economic goal, but it should also be the whole philosophy of what we want to achieve for the next 5 years. Although we have this goal of Vision 2020, but it has to be clearer within that 5-year plan. Is that what you mean? Because when I look at the whole plan itself, all the different trusts that they would say that they want to achieve, they include things like climate change, sustainability, education, and all various areas that Malaysian would want to foresee the government to address. But I guess the bigger question here is why we are not feeling it, why we don't see change, we don't feel change, we feel that we are still in the state of stagnation.
I mean, It's a report. Yes, I understand it has, and I accept, that it has that kind of cheerleading role to play. It's supposed to inspire, to rally people. But if there is this disconnect, like you say, that there's viewing it that it's just not really credible, it's too far-fetched, then that's probably pinpointing that there's a certain disparity between what they're trying to say and persuade us to believe, and what a lot of people on the ground are actually seeing and experiencing for themselves. So I think probably one very specific issue is about wages, right? National income is huge, and it's carved up into profit, into wages, and there are some sectors that benefit more. It's concentrated in some regions more than others, or some states, and then there's urban and rural. But what people can relate to, where they spend their money on, is wages. And so people feeling that their wages are not getting them very far, then it is speaking to a certain reality. And I think it is a major omission that there's very little analysis, and very also not much direct confrontation of the issue of persistent low wages. It's
So
really.
do you think that we should have like, for example, Singapore recently announced that it will increase the wages of its worker 4.5% increase. Do you think that should be what the government should put into the Malaysia plan in the case? Like, at least we see that it's not just the kind of Malaysia that the government envision, but also the kind of quality of living or quality of life.
Yeah, I think it could have been a bit bolder in pushing that that agenda. It stresses a lot on productivity, but which is productivity growth, high productivity are very necessary goals. But why it just kind of shirked from that, extending the logic of that, which is that higher productivity growth should translate into higher wages and higher wage growth. But it kind of shied from that, and then made laid out a certain plan that we were going to have some kind of wage indexing at the national level, but without urging, without compelling that should really that an objective should be wage growth, high wage growth, and reaching high wage levels. I mean, we keep stressing high income economy. Why not high wage?
Yeah, and in fact, when you talk about higher productivity, what I'm seeing is higher number of foreign workers coming into this country, and these foreign workers are unfortunately unskilled workers. So that's the reality that we are seeing right now. Like, we want to achieve that target, but we are using a method that would in fact lower the standard of living for ordinary Malaysians instead of increasing it. You want to ask something, Gowri, just now?
I think, earlier you were also saying, about the wage issue, that you can be called a high-income nation but still have a huge inequality between the people. And is that something that is inevitable, or it doesn't necessarily have to happen if you have certain other measures?
Oh no, none of this is inevitable. Countries can grow. You can achieve upper middle, moving to high income while inequality is increasing, or you can do that while inequality decreases. I think these are very much there are a lot of circumstances outside of control in terms of global economic conditions, sectors rise and fall, and just fundamentally some things are uncertain, but there's still quite a bit, I think, that can be regulated, that governments can give direction. I mean, you set a minimum wage, that has an impact on the labor market, on the wage floor. So, wage inequality can still be high, but at least it starts becoming unequal from a minimum wage.
But that goes back to another, I think, a similar thought that I have about Malaysian government. It wants to have a minimum wage. It wants to create an index for wages as well, but it's not being done in a honest, wholehearted measure. Like just recently, Indonesian government has set the bar that all Indonesian workers should have a minimum wage of 1,200 ringgit working in Malaysia. But our minimum wage is still at 1K or 900. So why we are setting our bar too low for that?
I think it's quite embarrassing, that Malaysia, as the higher income nation among these big among our ASEAN neighbors. So just omitting the city-state of Singapore as an exception, but Malaysia, you have Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines as well. In a few years ago, had pushed for actually negotiated higher a minimum wage even before Malaysia introduced the minimum wage. Philippine domestic workers secured were secured a minimum wage working in Malaysia by Philippines. So you have a lower income nation taking the lead in and setting a higher standard for minimum wage. In Malaysia, this high upper middle, substantially higher income than Indonesia. I think we have implemented the minimum wage. There was, doomsaying about massive unemployment and bankruptcies and so on, but we we weathered that. I think that we should be a bit less captive that minimum wage and all these are going to have such devastating consequences that are always there's always these warnings, and people are casting dark clouds, but we've weathered that, and I think and there should be a bit more confidence because of the momentum in Malaysia's economy. If it's still growing, then I think these kind of adjustments can be handled, and it just boils down to a bit of redistribution away from profits towards wages. Now the government has actually targeted that and welcomed that. From I think 33%, the share of national income currently going to wages, what's measured is 33%, and the target is 40%. So then how is that going to happen? There's no, there's not very clear ideas, I think. But why should there be something like higher minimum wages would be in line with that target? So there should really not be so much resistance to it.
So I guess in a way that maybe they should change their target a bit. Maybe try to rethink. Maybe it's not that goalpost that we want. It's probably like a totally different goalpost that we want. So, but do you think, before the we are towards the end of the show now. Before that, I just want to know, do you think it's even important for us to have this aim of a high-income nation, or perhaps we should completely change our aim into something else that is more reasonable and more relatable?
High income, I think it's hard to avoid it, and I'm seeing it from the perspective of the development planning and political leadership as well, putting myself in that, and increasingly, over the years, observing and thinking, what would I do as if I was a policymaker? The GDP, economic growth, it does summarize a lot. There is, and if you want to, you spread it out too thinly and then have too many other, many other targets. That's good, but then people will ask, well, at the end of the day, what does it mean? So you need to, have still a certain, pillar, and national income, remains effective for that, but it's not the only one. And I think it's a bit unfortunate that we've let that, take too much of the center stage. It should be sharing it with other things. And what's unfortunately missing is, a lot of other objectives. I mean, there were 9 key goals of Vision 2020. About society, about being mature, progressive, liberal, and how government operates, democratization. Of course, it was a qualified kind of democracy. We can debate that, but at least democratization or democracy was there, but it's really absent. And I think the realization is growing around the world. That things like democracy and human rights, they are essential for development. They have intrinsic value that it's regardless of income level, regardless of material benefits. These are human values and things that must be pursued and safeguarded. But at the same time, they also can contribute to continuing economic growth. If you want to advance further to an economy that is founded on innovation and technological growth and so on, then the society still needs to be more liberated, where you have more freer exchange of ideas, where disagreements are better tolerated. There's more open space to share differing views. So it's not just about human rights, right to freedom of speech, but I think there's so much potential contribution to the economy as well, from having more freedom and better governance, less corruption. So these really were very muted in this 11th Malaysia Plan, which is not just I have to remind again, it's not even doing justice to Vision 2020, which is claiming to be shepherding the country towards Vision 2020, but so much of Vision 2020 is missing.
So with that, I hope that Pemandu will employ you for a revision of 11 Malaysia Plan. Just kidding about it. But yeah, thank you very much for coming to Durian ASEAN and share your thoughts on the 11 Malaysia Plan. Thanks, Ho An.
Thank you very much for having me here.